In September 1944, a column of US paratroopers and British tankers advanced northeast up the Groesbeeksweg, their Sherman tracks churning up the dirt as they neared the city of Nijmegen. The mission: secure the Waal River bridges, clearing the way for the Allied invasion of Germany. As they approached the city, Dutch civilians flooded the streets, cheering, waving, and offering flowers. The mood was electric. Hope and joy hung in the air. But with each passing block, the crowds thinned. Smiles faded, eyes shifted nervously. The few faces that remained wore an unmistakable fear. Soon, the streets became eerily empty. In the silence, the tanks rumbled forth. The Germans were waiting for them. Operation Market Garden was the largest airborne operation of World War II, a risky plan aimed at breaking through German defenses in the Netherlands and securing a crucial route into Germany. The strategy called for 3 airborne divisions to seize key bridges, including the critical Waal River crossings near Nijmegen. British armoured forces from XXX Corps would race up the corridor, linking up with the US paratroopers. With the war dragging on, the Allies believed this swift push could shorten the conflict. The operation began on Sunday, September 17th, 1944. The drop had gone well. The 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment had quickly taken the Grave Bridge. The 505th secured the high ground around Groesbeek. But the 508th, instead of immediately seizing Nijmegen's bridges, had to stop to fortify its positions. That delay had given the Germans time to reinforce. Waffen-SS troops, combat engineers and artillerymen manned strongpoints. Flak guns, 20mm and 88mm covered open streets. Anti-tank positions were sited along key intersections. What's more, German commanders wired the bridges for demolition. On the morning of September 19th, the lead elements of XXX Corps linked up with the paratroopers of the US 82nd Airborne Division. The situation was clear. The Americans didn't have the firepower to break through alone. The Allied generals devised a joint assault. Lieutenant Colm van der Voort's 2nd 505 Battalion would attack alongside British Grenadier Guards armour. Van der Voort's paratroopers had fought through Sicily, Italy and Normandy. Remarking on their battle-tested mettle, he said, they were aggressive, skilled warriors. Their marksmanship, battle reflexes and survival instincts were finely tuned by being shot at, close and often. They were raised to be last in the chow line and first out the door in the jump line. The plan was simple: 2 task forces, 1 for each bridge. The Eastern Force, Companies E and F, backed by Grenadier Guard Sherman tanks and motorized infantry, would hit the road bridge. The Western Force, Company D with more tanks and a platoon of British infantry, would take the rail bridge. Dutch resistance fighters, intimately familiar with the city, would guide them. Some had already sabotaged several German demolition charges. The attack assembled at the Sion Hof Hotel. At 1:45 p.m., the column rolled out, Sherman tanks leading, paratroopers marching behind. Dutch fighters moved alongside, warning of enemy positions. The force moved fast until it hit an unexpected obstacle. Lieutenant James Coyle, platoon leader of E Company, watched as crowds of Dutch civilians lined the roads, cheering wildly as the paratroopers advanced. First Sergeant John Rabig rode atop a tank, waving to the exuberant locals. But something changed as they neared the city. As Rabig put it, the nearer we got to Nijmegen, the fewer people there were. Soon the people just disappeared, and we were smart enough to know the shooting would soon start. Readying themselves for battle, the task forces split. Van der Voort stayed with the Eastern Group, which stormed the post office, only to find it abandoned. As they moved forward, a Dutch woman flagged them down. she was hiding a wounded British pilot inside her home. She turned him over to the paratroopers, a small moment of humanity in the midst of an unfolding battle. Ahead, a reconnaissance unit from the 2nd Household Cavalry Regiment raced through the streets in their Daimler armored cars, each mounting a 2-pounder cannon. They moved quickly, aiming for strategic observation points over the Waal River. Captain Cooper, a British officer with the American paratroopers, had barely gotten his car into position when the Germans opened fire. The ground shook as 88mm shells slammed into the road, sending concrete shards flying. Cooper ducked, then ordered his men to return fire with their 2-pounders. The shells ricocheted off the enemy positions, but the German crews, rattled by the unexpected counterattack, quickly abandoned their guns, diving for cover. Seizing the moment, the paratroopers surged forward through smoke and debris. Then, another 88mm, hidden further back, opened fire. The first shell screamed in and exploded just short of the Daimlers. The British crews reversed, seeking better cover, but they were outgunned. Cooper grabbed his map, marked the gun's position, and radioed the Royal Artillery. The response was immediate. The first salvo of 6 25-pounder shells landed right on target. The Germans retaliated with 105mm artillery fire. Having ducked into a trench, Cooper, deafened and covered in dust, remembered, "This sort of shelling is perfectly bloody." Every now and again, the Spandaus opened up from the other side of the river and bullets whistled over our heads. The bombardment lasted over an hour. Elsewhere, the attack pressed forward. Lieutenant J.J. Smith of E Company led the charge for the British on the Eastern Front's attack. The lead Sherman tanks rolled into the streets and immediately came under heavy fire. German 88mm guns opened up, their armor-piercing rounds slamming into the Shermans. The first tank erupted in flames. Mortar and small arms fire followed, zeroing in on Smith's men. Snipers coordinated the fire, directing the barrages with radio communications. The British modified Shermans pressed forward despite the withering fire, their own machine guns raking the windows of nearby buildings. But the Germans had fortified their positions well. Camouflaged anti-tank guns locked down key intersections, backed by MG-42 nests dug into houses. The paratroopers, no longer able to rely on the British tanks, had no choice but to fight house to house. They moved fast, clearing buildings and pushing forward. That's when Lieutenant Dawson, leading one of the Guards' infantry platoons, spotted an opportunity. Finding an elevated position inside a house overlooking the German defenses, he brought up every automatic weapon he could find. He directed a punishing hail of fire onto the enemy, mowing down the defenders. But one of the 88mm guns turned its barrel toward him. The first shell slammed into the building, splintering wood and stone. Before Dawson could react, the second round hit and the walls buckled. He and his men scrambled to retreat as the structure collapsed around them. Meanwhile, the Americans kept advancing, street by street. The 2-story brick row houses gave them cover, and they used them well, leaping across rooftops, knocking through walls, positioning machine guns in attic windows. Van der Voort recalled, "Nijmegen wasn't all that neat and tidy. In the labyrinth of houses and brick-walled gardens, the fighting deteriorated into confusing face-to-face showdowns between small, momentarily isolated groups and individuals. Germans would appear where you least expected them." The Shermans kept pace behind the paratroopers, their .30 and .50 caliber machine guns laying down suppressive fire, allowing fire teams to move through alleys and backyards to outflank the German positions. Once inside a block of houses, they would blast through interior walls, bypassing open streets entirely. Private Carl Beck, a rifleman in E Company's 1st Platoon, later described the method. "We went into houses from the front and out the back, over the fence and into another house. Then out the front door, go across the street and into the front of another house." Even so, the German defenses held. As night fell on September 19th, the attack ground to a halt short of the bridge. The battle reached a stalemate, but the Germans were shaken. They set fire to buildings, trying to light up the battlefield and expose enemy movements. But instead, their own troops pulled back. Their perimeter shrank. For now, the bridges still remained in German hands. But Brigadier General James Gavin, commander of the 82nd Airborne, saw an opportunity. They needed to hit the Germans from both ends. The only solution was a river crossing. The Waal River, 400 yards wide, lay between them and the north bank. The men would cross in fragile Goatley assault boats directly into the teeth of German artillery, machine gun nests, and flak batteries. The Goatley boats, collapsible and made of wood and canvas, were flimsy. Each should have had 8 oars, but some had only 2. The paratroopers would have to row with their rifle butts. Major Julian Cook would lead them. At 2:30 p.m. on September 20th, as tanks moved into position, the Goatley boats arrived. Major Cook and his men rushed to the riverbank, dragging the boats into the water, just as a fresh artillery barrage began. Smoke, rounds, covered the far shore. Captain Moffat Burris of I Company admitted, "Had we seen what we were expected to cross in daylight, we probably wouldn't have done it." Air cover was called in. Above, 2 Typhoon aircraft screamed in from above, diving toward the German positions. As they closed in, tracer rounds lit up the sky, and one Typhoon was ripped apart mid-flight, its engine bursting into flames. The second pulled away, narrowly escaping the German barrage. Below, the paratroopers paddled into the smoke, but the Germans raked the river with machine guns and 20mm flak guns. Mortar shells began to fall. A direct hit on a boat blew it apart, leaving the survivors struggling in the water. The other boats had no choice but to push on. 13 boats reached the far shore. As the paratroopers poured out and ran for the embankment, engineers turned around, paddling back into the fire to retrieve the next wave. 11 boats made it back. Only 125 men were still able to fight when they hit the north bank. Captain Burris ordered his men to shower it with grenades before launching their attack. The stunned defenders were overwhelmed. Some tried to surrender, but the Americans were in no mood for mercy. The dike was secured in 30 minutes. When Major Cook and his men reached the northern end of the rail bridge, they witnessed 500 Germans trying to escape across it. American machine guns cut them down. Desperate, some Germans leapt off the bridge, even though they weren't over the river. The paratroopers fired at them in mid-air. When the fighting ended, 267 German bodies were recovered. With the rail bridge secure, the Allies turned to the road bridge. At 5:30 p.m., British Guards and American paratroopers attacked from the south. Sergeant Robinson led the Grenadier Guards onto the Walbrug, dodging German fire. An 88mm hit the road ahead. Robinson reversed, switching tanks as others silenced the gun. Robinson's tank barreled through the roadblock. His gunner, Guardsman Leslie Johnson, fired 3 precise rounds, destroying an enemy anti-tank gun, helping Robinson advance. But then, a German self-propelled gun opened fire. A shell exploded near Robinson, tearing off his helmet, nearly taking his head along with it. Johnson fired back, setting the enemy vehicle ablaze. Suddenly, grenades struck their tank. Robinson spun his turret, ready to fire, then saw American helmets. He held his fire just in time. Meanwhile, General Heinz Harmel of the 10th SS Panzer Division watched from a bunker upstream, gripping his field phone. The British tanks were on the bridge his men had earlier wired with explosives. He barked the order to blow it. Nervous fingers triggered the remote detonator. Nothing. Frantic, he repeated the command. Engineers scrambled, trying to detonate the charges. Still nothing. Wires had been cut. The explosives were useless. Harmel slammed the receiver down. His last chance was gone. The reason remains unknown, though some believe a Dutch resistance fighter cut the wires. The Germans had no choice but to abandon the bridge to the advancing Allies. Ultimately, only 2 tanks made it across to secure Allied control over the Nijmegen bridges. In the days that followed, German counterattacks intensified, but the Allies held on, preventing the Germans from retaking the bridges. Though not decisive for Operation Market Garden's aim to end the war sooner, the mission showcased impressive Allied cooperation, with Lieutenant Colonel Van der Voort notably admiring the close collaboration between the Americans and British, saying, "For soldiers of different Allied armies, it was amazing how beautifully the tankers and troopers teamed together."